The A-Team.
4 o'clock hour, and as promised, special guest in studio. You've heard him all season long. You followed him for several years, covering the Astros with The Athletic currently and previously for other entities. That is Chandler Rome over there at the ballpark today and nearly every day for the last several hundred days. Chandler, we certainly appreciate all your coverage all year, or your time spent with us and our listeners, and certainly with the continuing news of a potential exit from their third baseman. It's been a very popular topic. Obviously, you have talked to quite a few people about things in there. Maybe we can start with how it seems so overwhelming, and we just hit our listeners with a deluge of what everybody had to say about him publicly yesterday, including Jose Altuve. The magnitude of his presence probably cannot be understated.
No. He is their unquestioned leader. And it's kind of similar to what we were talking about with Carlos Correa 3 years ago. I mean, Carlos Correa had morphed into, but that was when they were still in the wake of the sign stealing scandal. And Correa was the only one that wanted to stand up and defend everyone. And again, Correa has some of the same characteristics as Bregman, going to the mound, things like that. But, you know, since Correa left, Bregman has more quietly and more unassumingly assumed the leadership role in there. And it has been very interesting to me. Look, 3 weeks ago, I would have thought this is going to go exactly like Correa, Springer, Cole, Verlander the first time, that they were going to bid him a fond farewell and everything would be good. Jose Altuve getting involved in this is very, very interesting to me. And I think it's going to tell us a lot about how that franchise operates and how the inner workings are and how influential Jose Altuve is, because I've covered him for 7 years. I have never heard him be as forthright or as candid or as adamant about anything as he is about the Astros retaining Alex Bregman.
No, that's why it stands out so much, because that's not his style at all. About anything, not just a player. And you bring up Correa, you bring up Springer. I think Springer, it was kind of like a foregone conclusion. I think a lot of people wanted Correa to be what we're seeing with Alex Bregman from a standpoint of other people, including, like, Jose Altuve never was as vocal about Correa. Doesn't mean he didn't think of him the same way, but you're right. Like, this is unprecedented.
I will say this. Carlos Correa was his own PR firm that year.
That's true.
He came on these airwaves with Robert Ford and said, I want to be an Astro for life. He would come, we were still doing Zooms then. He would come on the Zoom and say, they offered me this much and I'm not taking it. He'd say, they offered me this, I don't want it. I want a big, long contract. That has not been Alex Bregman's MO. Alex Bregman has said the same thing for 6 months about his free agency. We'll let Scott handle it. We'll let the teams handle it. I'm not thinking about it. I'm focused on winning.
Is that Scott having him behave that way, in your opinion?
I don't know.
Encouraging him to behave that way?
I don't know. I think there's some modicum of that. And I do think you can't have this discussion without also bringing up that Jose Altuve is a Scott Boras client.
Right.
Too. Now, I think this is genuine with Jose Altuve. I don't think this is Scott Boras being a puppet master telling Jose Altuve to say this. And, like, I think Jose Altuve is really genuine in this. Altuve does not strike me as someone that would be involved in one of these, Boras-led puppet shows. He is very genuine about this. I mean, I went up to him in Anaheim 3 weeks ago when he made the original comments, and I was just I had no idea this was coming. It was like in the middle of an interview, he gave me that answer, and it startled me a bit. I didn't know how to respond, and he's since backed up on it twice, and it's going to be fascinating because as I wrote in a story that posted today, I don't think we remember how the Carlos Correa free agency went, right? Like, they had that 5-day negotiating window with him. They offered him a 5-year, $160 million deal. Someone leaked it to various members of the local media to show that they tried. It was 5 years, $160 million. No one in the world thought Carlos Correa was going to accept that. Correa said it himself. They can't do that this time because Jose Altuve is now like, you have got to go sign this guy. It is non-negotiable. We need to get it done. The Astros have to make a legitimate effort. Now, if they get outbid, they get outbid. If a team comes in with 9 or 10 years and they're like, you know what, we're not doing it. But they have to show that they made a legitimate effort to re-sign Alex Bregman, because if they don't, it prompts wonder, like, is Jose Altuve satisfied? Is he going to be mad at this? Is this going to frustrate him? Like, there's a lot of layers here that I'll be fascinated to see how they unfold the next couple weeks.
A lot of money, obviously, at stake with all of these decisions. Spent more money last offseason than I think we believed they would. The two huge deals, one for Jose himself, obviously the other to Josh Hader. Last offseason, there was something that really didn't hugely impact the Astros directly with the Boris 4, although they were involved. This year, I don't know what the number is for Boris. It's probably at least 5 with who could be out there, and somebody who's definitely going to earn more money in Juan Soto. I'm not sure how Max Scherzer is viewed, Corbin Burns, Pete Alonso, just in terms of how this market might look like. Because we saw Carlos Correa hit it, and 2 different teams were willing to give him the mega deal that he sought. He ultimately signed with the Twins for a different deal. Do you have any sense of what this offseason might be in terms of the number of pursuers willing to reach this level with what's kind of out there as their alternatives? Because it clearly impacts Bregman.
He's the second best position player on the market, behind Juan Soto. You could Willy Adames, maybe. Pete Alonso obviously doesn't bring the defensive clout that Bregman does, but Bregman to me is the second or third best position player on the market. There's going to be the group of teams that go for Juan Soto. Maybe you look at those teams, and whoever doesn't get Juan Soto, maybe they go to plan B. The teams off of the top of your head that you already kind of think of, the Dodgers could use a third baseman, the Yankees, the Mets, the Diamondbacks, maybe the Cubs. These are all deep-pocketed teams that will spend money. That the Mariners probably aren't going to go to that level, but they need something. They improved their offense at the trade deadline and they were better in the second half, but they need another something to help build. That infield is not very good, so they could be a suitor. The Washington Nationals are kind of on the come up. A lot of people are talking about them maybe getting in the Soto sweepstakes because he still likes it there. Maybe if they miss out on Juan Soto, do you go to Bregman and that's the guy you build around?
I think they should definitely pay Juan Soto. I like all aspects of that scenario.
I've said it before. I'll just say it. Juan Soto's going to stay in New York. I feel fairly confident.
You agree with that?
They're going to be willing to shell out whatever it takes.
$500 million?
It's probably right in that ballpark.
How do the next 3 weeks go? Do they win the World Series? If they win the World Series with him, I don't see how they let him go.
But if they lose to the Royals... Yes. Then they let him go to the Nationals, right? See, I'm just manifesting it.
Or does Steve Cohen get the itch? Does Steve, if the Mets get eliminated in the CS and he gets the itch to...
Lex just said he got rid of all of his expensive contracts and they made the playoffs.
Well, he's going to get rid of... Probably not going to bring Alonso back. Insert Bregman. There you go.
Yes. We've talked so much about the one side of it. There clearly is another side to a decision like this at this stage of a player's free agency, because obviously he got his initial long-term extension and made $100 million from his time here and now hits free agency, which he did not do previously. But the age 32, 3, 4, 5, 6 Alex Bregman, what concerns would you have in watching his last 4 or 5 offensive seasons? Because I'm sure the defense will be fine. Elite, as a matter of fact. Well, what are your concerns about where does his production go over the life of what surely will be at least a reasonably long-term deal?
Yeah, the on-base percentage was down this year. He didn't walk as much this year. I don't know if that is a byproduct of he was in his walk year, and I did not, no pun intended there. But I don't know if that is because he's in his platform year and he wanted to show maybe some more slugs, some more batting average. I'm not sure, but he swung a lot. He didn't walk a lot. That was the theme of the whole lineup, though. Everyone around him did the same thing. So I think if he can get back to being an on-base guy, if he can get the walk rate can go back up, I don't think he's going to get back to 2018, 2019 hitting 40 home runs. Scott Boras told me something in Anaheim. I didn't end up running it, but he told me, he's like, everyone says he only hits homers at Minute Maid Park, but he put him anywhere else, he could hit homers. And I do think that's true. I don't think it's one of those where every single homer from him is some Crawford box special that goes 350 feet. He hit a couple. His last few home runs this year were dead center. He hit one
Fenway.
Yeah, he hit one oppo at the end of the season. He was driving the ball to all fields, and we know he was dealing with the elbow for most of the second half. So I think once those gremlins evacuate his elbow, then maybe we'll see a different kind of look there. But I think if any of you have been watching him for the last 3 or 4 years, he's not running hard. And that's mainly because he had a ton of soft tissue injuries in 20 and 21. And he was basically kind of encouraged. The Astros basically told him, look, if it's a playoff game, put it on the line, get down the line. And he did. I mean, I think he got down the line in one of the games against the Tigers at 29.2 feet per second, which is league average. So, but he's not going to be the guy that's going to go first to third. He's not a big stolen base threat, but he's a grinder. He's going to post every day. His defense is going to be elite. He should win the Gold Glove at third base this year. I don't see that changing. But, you know, I think if he can get back to the walk rate, getting a little bit up, getting the on-base percentage more around 350, then we'll see the Bregman that we've all been accustomed to seeing.
27 homers at home the last 2 years, 24 homers on the road the last 2 years. Walk rate, lowest of his Major League Baseball career this year at 6.9%.
He was just trying to be like his friends.
I get it.
None of his friends in the lineup.
All he did for the last hour is talk about what a great teammate he was. He absolutely led them down that path that they were on at the plate. It definitely was a team-wide decision on how they were going to go about things, and you saw what happened over the last couple of days. Chandler Rome is in studio with us, covers the Astros for The Athletic, and you hear him with us each and every week. Plenty more to discuss with him, plenty more to discuss about the Astros, more to them than just this one player moving into 2025 and beyond. Great conversation continues here on the A-Team on a Thursday edition of the show. As most of the players after yesterday's game said, they did not expect this to go down the way it did. Can happen in a short series. It's happened to two other teams, 2 games, 2 losses, season over. Happened to the Astros with a 3-1 loss and a 5-2 loss to the Detroit Tigers over the 1-2 game series that concluded with their ouster. 7 straight ALCS appearances are now over. Chandler Rome is in here in studio with us talking about, obviously, Alex Bregman. There are several other internal free agent decisions to make, a lot of them on the pitching side of it, a pair of starters and Yusei Kikuchi and Justin Verlander, some bullpen arms as well, tons of arbitration-eligible players that will receive sizable raises, and all this goes into the finances for a team that absolutely spent a lot of money on the 2024 Houston Astros, some of it on players who are no longer with the team that will still be earning money next year. Obviously, those decisions were made over the course of the year. What Dana Brown said today very specifically about Jim Crane, his willingness, desire to win, and then without saying the words for it, financially speaking, he's always backed that up to a certain degree, maybe overall, not with a ton of tremendous, huge, fat individual deals, but overall, yes, plenty of spending here. Beyond Alex Bregman, with those other free agents here, it doesn't seem like many, if maybe any, will be back next year.
Yeah, you never rule anything out with Justin Verlander when it comes to him and Jim Crane. They're very close. Verlander has signed. He's been traded for twice. He signed an extension here. He and Jim Crane are very close, and I don't think Verlander is coming back, but nothing would surprise me with that situation. I think the Kikuchi thing is certainly something that they should explore further, but he's also a Scott Boras client. He is getting a little bit older. He's going to be 34 years old. He's probably not going to get a 5 or 6 year deal. So if they can work something out and maybe a 2 or 3 year deal with him, I think that would be a pretty shrewd move, because they've got a nice little rotation stable. When you look at Blanco, when you look at Fromber, when you look at Arrighetti, Hunter Brown, Luis Garcia, they're optimistic will be ready for the beginning of the season. Maybe you get Javier and Urquidy back midseason next year, but I still feel like they need a mid-rotation, just an innings kind of stabilizing guy in case what happened this year repeats itself next year, where you don't get Javier or Urquidy back. Who knows what's happening with Lance McCullers. We haven't gotten a ton of updates on him. So, and you've got Hunter Brown, who just threw more innings in his life than at any point in his life. Same thing with Spencer Arrighetti. Yep. Same thing with Ronel Blanco. So they had these warning signs last year, too, and didn't address the rotation. I'd be surprised if they didn't do something with the rotation. And I'm not saying it's going to be Kikuchi, but maybe a vet to throw in the back end of it to stabilize things, and maybe a more known commodity to give them some innings. And Dana Brown, I actually thought it was interesting today that he brought up, they're going to look maybe at the back end of the bullpen too, to take some pressure off Brian Abreu, who they threw a ton this year. Yeah. Obviously, Ryan Presley did not have the season maybe that, or Josh Hader for that matter, maybe didn't have the season that everyone envisioned they would. I think they were still both very good, but maybe not the lockdown that they thought. So maybe they go out and get a leverage reliever as well to help out. But I think their focus has got to be the lineup. They have got to upgrade the lineup, whether that's at first base, whether that's at third base, whether it's someone to play center field or left field. Like, they have got to upgrade this lineup because I think, as we saw for the last 3 months of the season, it was their downfall that this lineup just couldn't score runs.
I think what's interesting is that even if they were to re-sign Bregman and decide against a scenario, which is actually, I think, plausible more than people are wanting to say, where they don't trade Kyle Tucker, just because, because of the impending, I think it's pretty much set in stone. I mean, it would take a miracle for him to come back, because I think the money that he's going to want is going to far exceed Bregman's.
Yes.
So, having said that, they decided to hang on to him. You still have a massive hole at first base. If you sign Bregman back.
Yeah, yes. I mean, they were a bat short all year. With this team, with Bregman on it. And even with a healthy Tucker, like, this team was a bat short all year. And they need to find that, whether that is someone that can come in and play left field, and maybe you explore a trade for Chas McCormick or Jake Myers, whether that's a first baseman like a Christian Walker, or if Bregman does leave, does Jim Crane get the itch, I need to do something in response, and does he go get Pete Alonso? There's a lot of different ways they can go, but I mean, at the end of the day, they have got to find someone that can play first base for this team, because watching the carousel that they ran out there of trying to play first base this year, and I remarked this to a ton of people through the season, it is incredible to me that an organization with this much success and this much winning could not find someone to play first base all season. And it is something to me, that has got to be their foremost priority in the offseason.
Bottom 5 in OPS at first base, Houston Astros this past season. There are a couple of other places where, holes clearly are. Curious on, again, the flip side of it, what kind of faith do you think the team has, do you have, in some people repeating next season? Most notably, Hunter Brown, top of the rotation, ace-level pitcher in 2024, and Yainer Diaz, one of the most, if not the most productive catchers offensively in baseball, and clearly defensively there were some strides made as well, them being as good, if not better, next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hunter Brown, certainly. I mean, this wasn't 2 weeks of success. This was 4 months. This was sustained. And, I mean, everyone knew he threw a sinker by August. Like, he wasn't sneaking up on anyone, and still no one could adjust to him. I mean, he was lights out yesterday. Like, that was incredible to watch.
Was that additionally important to any analysis you might be giving, that he did it in his first postseason start, did it after all that, did it backs against the wall?
Oh, 100%. And against the Detroit Tigers, like, the team he grew up, like, rooting for, the team that, I mean, there had to be so much stuff going through his head. The only thing that would have made it more impressive is if he did that at Comerica Park. But he was, I mean, that was as dominant a stuff as I saw from an Astros starter all year. I mean, he was incredible yesterday. So I think can you expect a sub 2.5 ERA all year next year? Probably not. But you can feel comfortable with him that he has made himself a 2 or a 3, probably a high upside 2. I don't think he's an ace yet, but there's so few aces in the game now. And then, with Yainer, the slugging percentage did drop this year. I mean, everyone got enamored last year. He almost hit 30 homers when he barely played. This year, slugging percentage dropped. I do wonder how much of that was they played him a lot. As Joe Espada said today, I mean, they wore him down a ton. He was in the lineup a lot, and I do wonder, whether with another offseason of preparing to be a full-time player, with knowing how that goes, I do wonder if he'll be able to maybe up the slug a little bit. But I don't think you can complain about anything Yainer Diaz did this year, maybe aside from the manner in which he tried to block the spiked breaking ball from Ryan Presley yesterday.
Which Roger Clemens has painstakingly diagrammed with a video on Twitter.
Yeah, and Todd Frazier, and I watched I wasn't watching the game while it was going on, but I watched the highlights last night, and Todd Frazier was right on it. I mean, and the other thing was, like, Yainer's the one calling the pitches too. Like, Yainer knows what's coming, and you've got to be, knowing that the tying run is at third base, you've got to be ready to block that ball. And then, something else right before that, Matt Vierling's ground ball, Jose Altuve. Jose Altuve is a great baseball player. He does so many things so well. The one thing that has really taken a step back is his defense at second base. He rated out as the worst defensive second baseman in baseball this year by defensive runs saved. You do wonder if he's able to stop that, if they are able to stop that ball on the infield, Kerry Carpenter probably doesn't go first to third, and then we're not even talking about the wild pitch. It's that little stuff that gets you in playoff games. And when the Astros lineup was functioning as it was, you can't make those little mistakes. And they just so happened to make them yesterday, and it cost them. But, you're not going to blame Yainer Diaz for one missed wild. I get it. It was in the biggest game of the year, and it was a tough look. But he made so many strides this year. Joe Espada called him one of the most improved players on the team today, and I have to agree. Just the way in which he helped himself and the pitchers and got more used to game planning, got more used to pitch calling. He and Frombert really started working well after they had their little disagreement in May. So I think you really saw him evolve, and I think they've got a guy that they're going to be really excited about to keep behind the plate and to see what he can do.
30 seconds, there's not a scenario where he goes to first.
I would never say never. I think right now they still view him as a catcher. But if the free agent market doesn't pan out the way they want, and they can, Dana Brown said nothing's off the table today. So maybe there is a scenario where that happens. But I think, as we all saw, Yainer Diaz, if he is a first baseman, he's got to do a ton of work defensively. Victor Caratini, far and away a better defensive first baseman than Yainer Diaz.
I wish the game had turned out a little differently, because he made several plays at first look awfully routine with balls he was catching on the short hop, not necessarily throws, but actually batted balls. He did a really nice job over there at first base. He had to work with a couple of throws. Altuve's throw that pulled him completely off the bag, he could do nothing about. Pena had a throw that pulled him off of the bag. He was able to maintain it and get the out. For as little as they asked him to play first base at the beginning of the year, a little surprising in that probably didn't happen a little bit sooner. An issue they have at first, an issue they have elsewhere. Obviously, they're not playing. They have some.
Thanks, Chandler. We appreciate the time. Unless you want to stay a little bit longer. It's up to you.
Let's do one more segment.
One more segment coming up next.
Another segment with Chandler Ohm. Nice enough to hang with us here in studio at Sports Talk 790. And, of course, for the viewers via the simulcast on Space City Home Network. No shortage of topics as a season like this comes to an end, as a run like this hopefully does not come to an end. We'll save that. Is this run over? Is the window closed conversation for a few moments from now. One other player I thought worthy of a little discussion, Jeremy Pena, just completed his third Major League Baseball season. Numbers are awfully similar in a lot of areas, year 1, 2, and now year 3. He's made changes to his swing. He had some ups and downs defensively this year, much more so than in previous seasons. I don't feel like it's time yet to ask this, but his play almost forces me to. Is this who Jeremy Pena is as a major leaguer, a low 700 OPS guy?
I've largely held this opinion for about a year and a half, and it's hard to describe it nuancedly, but winning the World Series MVP in 2022 and the postseason he had in 2022 is probably the best thing to ever happen to Jeremy Pena. It's probably also one of the worst, because I don't think that 3 weeks that he had in 2022, I think he got on an extreme heater and played unbelievably well. I think with a larger sample size, we've kind of seen that this is what he is. He is right at a league average hitter, a little bit above league average. I believe he led the league in infield hits this year. So I'd be interested to do the math to see, if you take out some of those infield hits, what it looks like. But he can really run, as you saw yesterday. Stole a run.
No other Astros
That's the
scoring
only
on
guy.
that play.
No, stole a run. Like, if that game ends that way, like we're talking about Jeremy Pena as the hero. I'm probably at the ballpark right now, but we're talking about Jeremy Pena as the hero. But the defensive regression this year was a little bit odd to me. And I think it was about a month where he just was in a funk. And because at the end of September, he was making jump throws across his body, looked great, was turning every play, and I think he looked pretty good. At the same time, Jeremy Pena is not who you want hitting 5th or 6th in your lineup. I think they need to build this lineup to where he can be hitting 6th or 7th every day. It's what I've been saying. They have got to upgrade this lineup. They have got to get another bat to hit, 4th or 5th in this lineup, to take some pressure off of him, because it felt like he came up in a ton of big spots this year, and I'm just not sure he's the guy. And I'm not saying he can't be. And again, we've seen it. Like, he did all the swing adjustments this winter, did all the stance adjustments, and he had a 705 OPS, and it was 701 last year. So the results were not that much different. He's a league average hitter. This kind of is what he is. I don't think he'll ever get back to, that 3-week run he had in 2022. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But, I tend to take the larger sample size over those three weeks, and it's tough to live up to. It's tough to live up to when you're the first rookie to ever win World Series MVP. That's a tough act to follow, and he's found out that way.
13 games that postseason for him. He's now played 13 games in the postseason since then. He was 1,005 OPS in those first 13. The Astros won 11-2, and he hit 345 in the 13 postseason games he's played last year and now this year. He's hitting 196 with a 462 OPS. 4 homers. The first 13, no homers, 1 extra base hit in the last 13.
And look, to win the World Series, you've got to have a guy like that step up. You've got to have a guy that no one's really talking about just have an out-of-body experience. And that's what he did, because you guys remember how bad Jose Altuve was in in 2022 in those playoffs? They needed someone to step up, and Jeremy Pena did that. That's how you get hot in October. That's how you make a run.
They'd still be playing in Seattle had they not homered.
Off of Penn Murphy.
What inning would they be in right now? The 32nd?
Right now? Well, I know Stephen Robert would definitely still be on the call. They would definitely have been able to make it through this marathon year's worth of baseball. A few other players and things to get into here with Chandler.
Yeah, this is really putting you on the spot, but given the finances involved and all that kind of stuff, and really, I'm really asking you. This is the on the spot part of it. Who's available off the top of your head? Like you mentioned, Pete Alonso or somebody like that. If you sign Bregman and you are going to go address first base, and in so doing, you're kind of addressing the lineup. You're less of a bat short, as you put it. Who would that be in a dream scenario? We're not breaking the bank, because I don't think Jim Crane's like that. But he's certainly willing to spend in the right scenario, and even in the wrong scenario, as they'll be spending next year.
Right. If they do sign Bregman, they're not going to make another huge splash. Bregman will be the splash if they do re-sign Bregman. You look at first base. Josh Bell's out there. Anthony Rizzo's going to be out there, and I think Anthony Rizzo, when you look at him, he's the kind of guy that this lineup doesn't have. He'll take a walk. He sees a ton of pitches. He'll swing at strikes, won't swing at balls.
I didn't see. Did Wex roll his eyes when you said that? Because he is an anti-Rizzo guy.
Well, you're mentioning all the ways he's going to get on base. You might as well mention the 20-plus times he's going to get hit by a pitch.
Well,
he does that all the time, and it's not. It doesn't seem very ironic to me that this is the same player we were talking about during the free agent offseason of the Astros are all in on Rizzo. They're one of the okay, they've just signed Jose Abreu.
Well, and I think the other thing with Anthony Rizzo, great clubhouse presence. Excellent clubhouse presence, and if they lose Bregman, they're going to need someone to come in and. Not saying they don't have leaders in there right now, but I think as we've seen, they've cycled out a bunch of leaders. And I think Anthony Rizzo can be a guy that if they do go that route, again, this is all of us just throwing stuff against the wall and see what sticks. If they go that route, I think he's certainly someone that can be a galvanizing kind of leader in the clubhouse. But Josh Bell's out there. Carlos Santana, the same way as Anthony Rizzo, a very well-respected veteran guy that could play some first base. Paul Goldschmidt, I know that's going to be an easy connection to make because he's from the Woodlands, but he has really declined the last year and a half or something. He was an MVP 2 years ago, and it's not gone well since. That sounds like someone else that used to wear an Astros uniform. So I'm not sure that's where you want to go. I do wonder, too, my colleague at The Athletic, Katie Wu, does excellent work covering the Cardinals, and they're basically entering a rebuild. To the point where Nolan Arenado is going to be on the trade market.
How old is he?
I don't know, but he's under contract until 2027. I do wonder if they explore that. If maybe winging a trade for him, seeing if the Cardinals pay down some of that salary. One of the best defensive third basemen of this era or any era has declined a little bit offensively, but I do wonder if that's a route they look to too. Like as Dana Brown said today, nothing's off the table. So, Christian Walker is going to be a free agent too, but he's probably a guy that's going to want a similar deal to Jose Abreu, 3 years for about $50-something million. I floated. Maybe because I watched him hit a grand slam off Brian Abreu in Baltimore. Anthony Santander makes a ton of sense.
Oh, I love him.
Can play both corners.
Kills the Astros, too.
Can play first base.
He hit more grand slams this year
than
against
the whole team
than they did all year against everybody.
And should be noted, is close with Jose Altuve, is was managed by Omar Lopez.
Are you trying to tell us that Altuve is actually the Astros GM? He's going to re-sign Bregman and go out and get Santander,
I will take
too?
Jose Altuve being the de facto GM over other people. Saying.
They are used to players having input in the front office. But,
only the all-time greats. He is one of them.
Yeah. But
he's in the top 3.
But you wonder with Santander, too, was this the peak?
Yeah.
Was hitting 40-something home runs, was this the peak? And then are you going to get the decline on the back end? But
tremendous stuff. A lot of options.
This is all if Ty France isn't available in some way because he kills the Astros.
Also true. Great stuff all season long. I know we'll catch up with you a couple of times. Hopefully our listeners will as well, and they can always find you via The Athletic. Chandler, really, really appreciate it.
Get some sleep.
Definitely. Thanks, guys.
All right, Chandler Rome of The Athletic. We got plenty more coming up next.